Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.
And you're very welcome along to this week's edition of Friday Night Racing. It's Gilroy and Johnny Ward with you every Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock on all the OTB social channels. Best place to get us these days, of course, is the OTB Sports app. And, of course, we're also every Friday evening at 8 o'clock on Off the Ball on News Talk as well. Johnny, how are you?
I'm just looking to my left here, watching a bit of Cheltenham with Tiger Roll back in action. So things could be a lot worse. His first run over jumps of the season, run against Easy's Land, kind of brings us back to Cheltenham in March, which seems an awful long time ago, Ger, for obvious reasons. Yeah,
it's a different world, of course. And the jump season is back as well. That's the other kind of part of this. The last couple of weeks, it's kind of just been slowly ambling back into view, but it's back with a bang now, properly.
Yeah, the Down Royal meeting was really good, and we obviously had Keith Donoghue on about his big win in the Grade 1, but there's been some cracking racing. The Morgiana at the weekend that punched down two of the big Irish contenders for the champion hurdle run, and obviously Cork has been cancelled because the track was flooded, but with Cheltenham back, Punchestown back, and some big meets coming up, getting a bit chilly in the air, it's so the jumps is very much on the way back, and thankfully enough, we still have Dundalk as well on kind of Friday night. So it's been a bit of a mad year in terms of the racing because it's been very compressed after sort of 3 months off. But it's just maybe feeling a bit more normal now with the jumps coming back and Willie Mullins having a treble the other day, kind of normality resuming.
Yeah, Keith tipped against himself last week and his own horse finished second at 66-1.
Yeah, that's the sort of logic that should have him probably tipping instead of me, really, to be honest.
Or maybe he should just tip his own horses.
He probably should. 66-1.
Yes. Not. Yeah. How did your tip go last week, Johnny? We can talk about that a little bit later on if you want. Our guest this week is Sam Ewing. Sam, good afternoon to you. How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
What's the crack?
Just arrived in Dundalk, and hopefully we'll have a bit of luck this evening.
Yeah. So you've got 4 rides in Dundalk this evening. Is that right?
Yeah, two for my boss, Ger Lyons, and 2 for Aidan McGuinness. Very
good. And so if they're for Ger Lyons, are you riding out with these horses all the time then?
Yeah, I'm in Ger's full time. It's great yards, get great experience off Colin and Gary, and yeah, it's great.
And how well do you get to know the horses if you're riding them out? Is it easier for you this evening now to ride for Ger than it would be for Ado in some ways?
Well, I've obviously rode to ride for Gilroy at home a bit, and I'll know them and maybe help me figure out which way I'm going to ride them.
There's definitely going to be help from Sam, I think, in terms of giving us a winner tonight, Ger, because the man is absolutely on fire and he has some interesting selections. So not only is he a brilliant jockey, but we'll tell is he a good judge of a horse as well. You have some good rides tonight, Sam.
Yeah, four of them, 4 nice rides. Hopefully one of them will get their head in front there.
Can you have any semblance of, I don't know, has it sunk in how good this season has been for you, how you've absolutely exploded onto the scene? You know, obviously Dylan Brown McMonigal and other Ulster lads would have created waves, and there's been a lot of chat about him, but maybe the last month, 6 weeks, you must be just expecting to ride winners the whole time, and for your age, it must be an extraordinary feeling.
Yeah, look, I'm just very grateful for everyone who supported me. Kevin Orion, my agent's been brilliant. Shane and Ger have been really good to me since I started in there, and yeah, look, it's going well, so hopefully it can continue.
If you could tell us a bit about your dad as well, because I'm sure you've, horses have been probably part of your life as soon as you were basically walking, or even probably before that, and just his own background for those who wouldn't be familiar maybe with point-to-point racing.
Yeah, well, my dad actually wasn't brought up in around horse at all, and he started training pointers a few years ago, and we've been lucky at it to have a few nice ones come through our hands, and we train a few and try and sell them on, and we like to see them doing well in the track.
So how did he get into it then? What was his background?
Well, it's all really dates back to he had no interest in horse at all, and one of his neighbours owned a pony club, and he started in there, and I just think he never looked back, and then he became a jockey. Rode, I think, 90 or 100 winners point to pointing. And once he retired, then a few store horses, and then started training some point to pointers.
This is the thing, Ger. I firmly believe that maybe if hurlers are kind of bred to be hurlers, and if you're from Kilkenny, there's a good chance to become a hurler. I firmly believe if you send 100 kids to go ride horses for a week, 50 of them will be hooked. I firmly believe that. It just goes to show.
I can buy that. I can certainly buy that. Tell us a little bit, Sam, about your first memories then of getting up on a horse. What's the bit that you kind of think back on? Or did you have a favourite horse as a kid? Was there one that you were like, yeah, this is what it's going to be?
To be honest with you, I can't really remember. I don't know what the horse was called. I don't think he was any good, but he was very quiet, and I got to ride him around the gallop one day, and I thought there was no feeling like it, and I've no idea what the horse was called now, but he was very quiet, and that was the first time I sat in a racehorse.
Were you playing other sports at the time? Was there ever any possibility that you weren't going to try and become a jockey?
I think I was always wanting to become a jockey. I did a bit of show jumping when I was younger, and calving and things. Played a bit of rugby as well, but I think racing was always what I wanted to do. The
point-to-point scene seems like it's just a real family atmosphere as well. So I can see how when you grow up and it's just part of your life, you just assume that this is going to be part of your life. It's like it gets handed down to you in many respects, and that must be a very comfortable place to learn how to win and how to lose. Yeah, it's learned from an early age, like when we were going to the point-to-points and we thought one might run well or go close, and they could go down and fall at the first or anything. You can learn anything happens, and just life goes on.
What part of you're from? County Antrim, Sam? Yeah,
Temple Patrick.
Would you be sort of near, like, are you near other yards up there? Because obviously there are quite a few trainers, and obviously point-to-pointing is fairly strong up the northeast as well.
Wilson Dennison and Colin McKeever, they train a good few point-to-pointers, and they're maybe only 5 minutes over the road. So I would go down there when I was younger, and I'd learn a good bit schooling and messing about.
And there are many in your family?
There's my mum, my dad, and then I have two younger brothers, Jack and Will.
And the obvious question is, are they going to go down the same volatile road as being a jockey?
I think maybe Will might take on to it. He hasn't done very much. He's only 9, but he's very good for 9. And I don't think Jack has any interest.
All right, yeah, although that might change as well. What's it like in the family? Because like they turn on the TV and there you are riding winners at big tracks, or riding at the Curragh or whatever, you're riding at Dundalk, and maybe they forecast that it would go well for you, but it must be an amazing journey for your brothers and for your parents to watch you progress as well.
Well, I can't really answer that one for you.
Yeah.
I'm not there watching it, but when I was sitting watching TV with my family at home watching the racing, it was class seeing, whatever track it may be and whoever jockey it may be. It was always like, wow, hope that can be me someday. So you're living the dream a little bit then, Sam. Well, I wouldn't go as far as that, but so far so good anyway. Yeah.
This is the thing about I've been warned by Ger Lyons. I think Ger Lyons' comment was, I've never seen a 16-year-old as mature and with his head on his shoulders as much as this lad. So if you're looking for some salacious headlines, Ger, it's going to be a struggle with this lad, I think. He's just Sam, how did you become so mature? You should be a young ragamuffin.
Oh, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how that happened now, but I can't answer that one either. When you were making the decision to go and work for Ger, was there any temptation to give it another year, or to decide, like, was it obvious enough in your head that, yeah, I'm ready for this, I'm going to go and do it? Well, I rode pony racing just last Christmas, just the week after last Christmas, and I was probably getting a little bit heavy for it, and I'd probably done enough of it. And my dad would be good friends with Shane Lyons, Ger's brother, and we had a bit of a chat with him and thought we'd done enough pony racing and it was time to go on.
Because the pony racing circuit is obviously, and we've talked about this a little bit, it's a great breeding ground for some of the best young jockeys that are out there at the moment. You won the Dingle Derby in 2017. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because that's a big kind of staging post where everybody goes, ooh, this guy must be pretty good. He's won the Dingle Derby.
I was actually very lucky to get the ride. I think that was my second year pony racing, and I was just delighted to get the ride in the race. And
how did you get it? What was the story behind that? Why did they put you on it?
Why did they put me on it? They just want Brian Laird actually owned and trained it, and he's from Downpatrick, not far from me. I went down one day and I rode her out, and he just told me that I could ride her in Derby if I wanted, so
right.
I was happy with it.
Okay, so he obviously thought that you were in good form and you'd obviously done quite well with the horse that day and had a bit of a connection, the pony rather, and then the race itself, obviously, I'm just looking at the list of people who are in it. So Shane Cross, Ben Cohen, Andrew Slattery, and we've already talked about Dylan Brown McMonagle. So a lot of the best young Irish jockeys are in the race. Did you know they were that good at the time?
Yeah, well, I was only small compared to them at the time. They were a lot better than me, and it was probably very clear back then that they were going to do as well as they've done.
It must have been a bit of a tip in itself. So I'm just looking up an AA route planner. 530 kilometres to get from your place to Dingle, so 1,060 kilometres round trip. So you were obviously going there for with some reason in your head, anyway.
Yeah, it was. The aim was just to get one winner, and anything after that was a bonus. And I had to wait till the Sunday for that race, so I was very, very grateful for it.
I just spoke to Ger about this recently, and he was really extolling the point-to-point circuit and how when you guys come to the track, I remember Jack Kennedy riding his first ride in the Tipperary Cup, and he was 16 at the time, but he looked like a jockey. And like, where are you compared to, we'll say, when you start riding in pony racing until when you leave pony racing and you become a jockey? How much do you progress in that time, and how much of a benefit is that nursery for you?
It's very. It would really switch you on, and you learn to ride a race. You have to hold your own, and yeah, I think it deserves a lot of credit.
I suppose who were the lads you would have looked up to when you were down there then?
Probably Ross Orion was at the top when I was just starting, and just all about trying to ride like him.
And when you go to Ger and Shane's, then was it daunting to, I suppose, you're uprooting from your home and you're going to a serious yard, and were you welcomed, or did you kind of have to put the head down and graft like everyone else?
They were very good to me when I was younger, maybe 12 or 13. They let me come in, and I did a day or a few days, just maybe when we were at Tattersall Sales. They let me ride out in the mornings, and so I kind of knew what to expect a little bit. But they're all very good to me, and everyone in the yard's been brilliant.
And what can you say about the benefit of being able to learn from Colin Keane, which must be kind of like a young footballer getting practice sessions with Messi or Ronaldo or whatever at this stage, how well he's been doing. Obviously rode a Breeders' Cup winner at the weekend as well. Was he helpful in your education?
Yeah, he's very helpful, and so is Gary. Getting to ride work with them it's invaluable. And look, if you had any question or you thought you did something wrong, I know I could go and ask them, and they give me a straight answer.
And were there jockeys when you were a kid, on TV watching, that you would kind of say, I like that style, I can take a little bit of that, or look at what he did there? I'm just wondering, what were the YouTube videos that you were watching back again and again and again to kind of see, yeah, I'm going to model myself on him? No,
I wouldn't say it was like that. you know, like when you're watching them lads on TV, it's you don't expect it to be the way it is. They're you know, they're very, very nice to you, and it's not like how do I put it? It's not like they're above
They're out to
themselves.
get you or whatever.
Yeah, sorry. So I meant even when you were younger, Sam, as opposed to when you joined. Like, who were your idols growing up as jockeys on TV when you were? I mean, you know, it's not that long ago. It's last like 5 years ago when you were 11 or 12, and looking at stuff, going like, do you have old videos of like legendary jockeys? Do you think, yeah, I'd like to be, you know, I'd like to be Johnny Murtagh, I'd like to be Pat Smullen, I'd like to be one of those guys?
Well, actually, I wouldn't really follow flat racing when I was younger. I was all about the jumping.
Right.
I looked up to Paul Carberry, Barry Garrity. If you know, if I ever thought I could have done something better or need advice, I'd ring them, and they'd always be happy to help.
Right.
Yeah, because your dad is very good friends with
Corey too.
Your dad is very good friends. Antrim's famous son, of course. Your dad is very good friends with Barry Garrity, of course.
Yeah, I think they go a long time back, and we've had a few pointers together, and been lucky with them. So
that's nice to hear, because, and look, I'm sure that helps you then whenever you end up with other jockeys. It's like, well, this is, of course you're going to chat to me because I've chatted to some of the greatest of all time. So no one's going to hi-hat you when you've already been in conversation with those guys. And it's interesting too that you pick two men who, whenever we talk to anybody on this show, always talk about the quality of horsemanship, particularly with Paul Carberry, like the most naturally gifted horse rider of his generation is how everybody talks about him. Is that your style as well? Is it like, you know, it's specifically about the relationship with the horse?
Well, listen, I like to try and be a good horseman, but I wouldn't be able to compare myself to Paul Carberry or Barry Garrity. No,
but even are they inspirations to you as opposed to comparing yourself? It's very early on. I know, Sam, I'm not asking you to say that you're going to have their careers, but like in terms of a style and a philosophy and what they did, is that stuff that you're thinking, yeah, I want to do a little bit of that?
Yeah, it would be. Paul's ice cold and very patient, and Barry, like him, he lifts the horse home. He's very strong, and I suppose you have to try and be a bit like them, yeah.
It's a hard thing to imitate, as you say, because like you're very young, and I mean you were actually probably very young even when Carberry retired, but you obviously saw plenty of him. And like what could you describe Paul Carberry as, Sam? Because it was kind of like it's a bit like, as Yeats says, how can you tell the dancer from the dance? He was just kind of in tune with the horse, as if they were one. And also, I suppose, the fact that, as you say, he just made it look so natural and was quiet, and it was like the animal didn't even know there was somebody on top of him.
Yeah, he could sit anywhere in the race, and he'd always arrive there bang on time and never panics. I suppose that's a big part of it too. Yeah, very, very cool.
And as a matter of interest, Sam, when you're ringing them up, what are you asking? What kind of questions are you asking? What is the bit that you're curious about or that you want information about?
Well, maybe about tracks. I would ring Barry if I was asking about tracks, or what way would you ride them, or something like that. Or maybe if I thought I'd done something wrong or just got beaten, I would ask Paul or Barry to watch your back and see what they thought.
That's a really brilliant thing to have in your life, somebody who's been through all this and is a sounding board and who you can trust, because there's a deep family relationship there as well. That must give you a lot of comfort that if you are going wrong, somebody's going to say, okay, steady here, focus on this. These are the things you need to be looking at.
Yeah, that's it. Look, you get a very straight answer off both of them, and I think that's what you need.
Oh, 100%.
I think we have sourced the young man riding in very, very famous silks in the pony racing circuit, no less. Which I think this one might be a little bit of a surprise, but riding for Jigginstown, no less. What was that like, Sam?
It was actually it was a funny story, actually. I asked Gordon could I ride in the colours, and he said yes. And then I met Eddie at the field one day, and he said he was delighted that someone was riding in them, and yeah, they were very nice to me. So I think that kind of helped.
Did you
Get to
win?
know them a bit better.
Did you win
Win?
in the Jigginstown colours?
No, not yet.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, plenty of time. What was special about riding the Jigginstown colours? You obviously have admiration for Michael O'Leary.
Yeah, well, Eddie was. I'd know Eddie from when I was younger. Maybe look at a few horses at the sales, or I'd see him there. And yeah, very nice to me. I wouldn't really know Michael, but they're obviously both very kind to let me ride Tiger Roll and let me use their shoe.
Yeah, Tiger Roll pulled up in the cross country race, which is pretty big news. It probably not a great sign for maybe his season ahead. It was looked like a very disappointing run. I only had it on the corner of my eye, but I suppose for it's interesting you say that going to sales and all that. Would you have your whole career ahead of you on the track, but would you have your eye on that sort of part of the racing game down the line, and maybe buying and selling, or getting into something after you finish up riding?
Yeah, I would. I have a few pointers, a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old, just something to be invested in and keep me busy.
You already have horse at home yourself?
Yeah, I have 2.
And you're 16, is it?
Yeah.
So you're 16 years of age. You're one of the top apprentices in Ireland. You can more or less ring up Tony McCoy, Barry Geraghty and Eddie O'Leary whenever you want, and you already have horses at home.
So it sounds good when you put it like that, yeah.
It does sound pretty good.
Sarah, where were you when you were 16?
Oh, look, picking my nose. You know.
Yeah, God.
Sam, the life of an apprentice is obviously, like, we're making it sound like it's absolutely fantastic, but it's a lot of hard work as well. It's early, getting up early, and it's long days, and it's making sure that you're honing your craft. How's that part of it actually going for you, the actual day-to-day work?
Oh, it's very simple in Gers. We just it all happens very quick. We ride the lots and get the work done. There's never any hassle, and it's all very straightforward. And
it's a really successful yard at the moment as well, with some absolutely world-class horses in there. So that you must feel that kind of sense of, wow, things are going. This place is going places.
Yeah, it's probably one of Ger's best years. Obviously 2 classics. It was just great to be a part of it, great to be there for it.
Yeah, you must be the lucky charm. They're going to rub your head before every race, and one of these days you're going to get on some of those super horses as well. So that must obviously be your ambition. How long are you actually an apprentice for? It's a silly question, I should probably know the answer, but I'm sure a lot of our listeners don't know it either. How long are you an apprentice jockey before you actually end up not being an apprentice?
I think it's just until you ride out your claim. I think 95 winners is when the claim's gone, and then you're a professional jockey.
And you've had 18 so far in the first 7 months of your career. So, do you have a time frame in mind when you'd like to do that? Is that a couple of years, or what would you like? What do you think is realistic?
Well, look, I've the first 18 or 19 have came very quick. I'd ideally like to save my claim a little bit for next year, and hopefully I can be of value to Ger in a nice handicap. But look, I don't know, just as quickly, as efficiently as possible.
Actually, yeah, Aidan McGuinness texted me there not that long back. I was just texting about you because I said we're interviewing you, and he said make sure to hold on to your claim because he has one lined up for Galway next summer that you have to ride.
Very good. That's no harm already being identified that far out. So things are obviously going very well for you. The 4 you have today is Silver St. Cloud at 5, Spoom at 5:30, Pure Nature at 6, and Royal Admiral at 6:30. Is there any of those you fancy the chances of?
Silver St. Cloud's coming back from a break. hopefully she can run well, and hopefully Shaboom can run well too after being placed. Ran a cracker last week, being placed, and hopefully she can back that up a bit too. And if Ado's form continues, I think they'll both go well.
Right. Well, go on.
Just on that Shaboom race, Jerry, it's worth pointing out that's a listed race, and by virtue of it being a pattern race, namely a listed or a group race, the riders of the horses in that race can't claim. So whereas Sam would previously be claiming £7 off Shaboom the last time she ran, which was only a week ago, he can't now claim £7 in this race, which effectively means that the horse is £7 worse off than it should be in a non-listed race. So to make a long story short, Ger Lyons is saying, I know I have a jockey on the horse here who basically is £7 wrong, and I'm being sort of penalised £7, but I still don't care because I want Sam to ride the horse. And I think that's testament to your ability, but also just your performances at Dundalk of late, Sam. What's that track like to ride? And I thought it was very interesting. I was put myself off back in Jackamil just because I thought it was a tricky race last day. But the fact that you were claiming off a front runner who'd gone up the weights and didn't manage to win, what's it like riding the track? And do you enjoy making the run on horses like that?
Yeah, it's a lovely track to ride. Big galloping track. And when you have a horse that jumps and travels as well as Jackamil, it's straightforward. Yeah,
it's like, is that a different challenge to you to ride there than, we'll say, is it a specialist track to ride in terms of trying to tactically ride a race? Is it different to turf, or is it actually one of the more straightforward tracks to ride?
I think it's straightforward. I think a lot of it depends on if the horse handles it or not. Some horses don't like it, some horses do. So I think it depends on that a bit too.
How are you finding the surface since they relayed it?
Yeah, it's riding well there at the minute.
Well, listen, enjoy riding it well today, Sam. Best of luck in those 4 races, and best of luck, obviously, with the rest of your career. It's a brilliant start so far. As you know, the game is full of vagaries, so we wish you all the best with whatever's coming and continued success.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
All the best, Sam.
Sam Ewing there, as Johnny put it, a 16-year-old with the world at his feet. Friday Night Racing on Off the Ball is brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie. That Dingle Derby, Johnny, just talk to people who are kind of wondering, like, why did I bring it up? But the list of people, of jockeys who've come from that is fairly sensational. And the list of jockeys who he beat in that race is fairly sensational as well. Yeah,
the pony racing circus is just a phenomenal breeding ground. I have to say now, I've never been to a pony race. I've been to point to points. I haven't been to pony racing, and it's definitely something I'd like to do. A lot of it's very, very picturesque as well. You can imagine going down to Dingle for the Dingle Derby, the crack that you'd have that weekend, and I'm not sure, was it Dylan? Maybe it was Dylan Brown McMonagall we had on when he was on about the circuit up in Donegal as well. And it's kind of for a place like that, pony racing is really it is their racing, because Donegal is quite some way from a racetrack. You're talking about like Sligo or somewhere in the north, maybe down Royal, and to have the pony racing up there is a big deal, and it's just a fantastic nursery really for these jockeys, that they can, as Ger Lyons said, more or less when they come out of the pony racing circus. Jack Kennedy takes a ride on a horse that was sent off hot favourite on his first start, Tagliatelle, when he was 16 years of age, and that's because clearly the horse was well fancied. It was also because Jack was an outstanding prospect, and people knew straight away. It was like Gordon Elliott snapped him up like you'd snap up a young player before somebody else would get him.
Well, it was really interesting to hear Sam talk about going to Ger Lyons when himself and his dad would be down when he's a 12-year-old, and that's exactly how the scouting system in football works. It's like, come over for 2 weeks, go back and finish your school, come over in the summers, have it, and then suddenly, as soon as you turn 16 and you're legally allowed to sign your YTS forms, off you go.
Absolutely. Now, just say, for example, Colin Keane leaves Ger Lyons and joins somebody else, joins Ballydoyle next year. I have no idea if that's going to happen. It's obviously been doing the rumour mills because he's been riding for Ballydoyle or whatever. And again, as I say, I haven't a clue if that's going to happen. I've no suggestion it will. But like, Ger must look a bit to the future. So he's Gary Carroll there, and now he has. Like, the problem with the likes of Sam is that it's like Dylan Brown McMonagall. the amount of apprentices that just fade into obscurity, and the level of, I suppose it's like David Clifford, except he's obviously completely he's lived up to it. But the amount of David Cliffords that don't really go on, and I'd say that's the biggest challenge for these young lads. It's like, first of all, it's injuries are going to come your way, particularly if you're a jumps jockey. Jack Hindy's had horrific injuries, and you're going to have to deal with a lot of downs in your career. It's more about managing them, but I mean, when you listen to Sam, it's just like, well, he's probably more mature than I am, to be honest. So it's like, well, what am I going to advise him? And it's just trying to keep him on the ground. But I think to be riding for Ger, who's essentially as good a trainer as you get in this country, and to have Colin there beside you, who's the best rider in the country, and then to have that mental kind of wherewithal as it is, it's hard not to be excited for the kid.
Think about it as well, like you've made a mistake and you want to get some advice, and then you're ringing some of the greatest horsemen that the country has ever produced, and they're giving you honest feedback, and they're not like, oh, here's this lad again. It's like, yeah, I will help you, of course I will. Like, I think that's also part of that too. So what's the ceiling for somebody at that level at this stage who's got 18 winners so far?
Yeah, I make it 19 according to the Racing Post,
right.
Whether that's right. I must say 19 from 141, like 13% strike rate with 12 seconds, 13 thirds and 11 fourths. So like, you're talking about a third, maybe even more of his rides so far are sort of, bang there. And to have a 13% strike rate at this stage, he's 16 years of age, is just phenomenal, really. And size doesn't seem to be an issue for him. Obviously, a lot of apprentices, the problem is that they're going to get too big.
Yeah.
You can be absolutely certain there are people, if the bars were open, there'd be horsemen and horsewomen would be in bars who like to talk racing, and those racy pubs around the country saying Sam Ewing is going to be the next champion jockey. Sam Ewing is the best thing ever. And it doesn't always work out like that, but it's hard not to feel excited by looking at him. And he was on a horse in Galway that got beaten, that was unlucky, and for Aido McGuinness. And apart from that, I can't even think of any races that kind of went against him. It's just been phenomenal and real explosion onto the scene the last few months. To ride 3 winners in a row at Dundalk there over the past week. I think what's very important, though, is that he has the people looking after him. I think Ger is just going to be really important. You have to manage a kid like that, and I would, if it were me, I'd try to protect his claim. I wouldn't try to. I think he's a long career ahead of him. There's no need for him to lose his claim very quickly, and I would try to protect him as much as I could for my own yard.
So that you give him the opportunity to mature before you're putting him up where it's just his riding skill. That's the whole point of the claim. Because again, this is like, it's these parts of the game that are a little bit mysterious and opaque to outsiders.
Yeah, it's very straightforward, right? So a £10 claimer, to give the young jockey his or her best chance starting off, you give a £10 claim, which literally means £10 is taken off the weight off the horse's back. Now, £10 is a lot. £10 can be a massive difference. So to give the jockeys something of a level playing field against professionals, you're giving a £10 claim, then it goes to 7, then 5, then 3, and hopefully then eventually you ride out your claim. But if you're as a punter and you can advertise, holy crap, this £10 claimer looks just as good as a lot of professionals, you're immediately thinking, I want to back any horse that he's on, I want to back it because I'm at an advantage, because that horse is essentially carrying less on his or her back than he or she should be. So Sam's in that position, but you do ride out your claim obviously quickly enough, so he'll be soon down to 5. And the thing for Ger is, you don't necessarily want him to be like a fully fledged professional jockey without his claim when he's very, very young, because he could, we spoke to John Ox in recent weeks. Mick Cannan was riding until he was 50. Sam is 16, so he could be riding for another 35 years. So there's a long, long road ahead. And from a selfish perspective, Ger might also say, and you can see he's using him a hell of a lot recently. He's using him on well-fancied horses. As I said, even in that race where he can't ride his claim today, Ger could say, I want to utilise his advantage to at the behest of others, if you want to say that, for as long as I want. But it's also with Sam, there's no need to push it too fast, because it's been a phenomenal 141 rides already, and there's a long, long road ahead. Okay,
very briefly, we should just talk about Tiger Roll. Obviously, there's a link there. Sam Ewing rode him on his seasonal comeback, but he's been pulled up today.
Yeah, as I said, I didn't. I'm just kind of going on my punting WhatsApp group, the members of which will never be revealed for their own sanity, I think. But they were just saying it looked just looked very tame. He was basically pulled up. He probably didn't ever look like he was in the race, and you'd just be a little bit worried for him because his comeback run was okay, but I guess to run the ground wouldn't have been atrociously bad at Cheltenham, so I don't think that would have been an issue. So we'll have to see what happens, but hopefully at least he seems to be fine anyway. But it wasn't an auspicious run from him today over the cross country at Cheltenham, obviously over which he's such a brilliant record.
Okay, so nothing to worry about long term if something like this happens, or do you think, look, maybe that is what an incredible career, and
well, you'd have to say, Ger, if on the back of the fact that he was seriously injured last year, he was beaten 29 links in his flat return, which itself wouldn't necessarily worry me under Sam. But if he's pulled up today, which is not like Tiger Roll at all, he rarely puts in a bad run. The fact that he's a 10-year-old, certainly you'd have to be a little bit concerned, but I wouldn't give a damn if he never ran again, as long as the horse is all right. I think that's much more important for a horse like that, so I guess we'll see what happens.
All right, okay, so the jump season is upon us. We've been talking about this, and the 2021 National Hunt Tote 10 to follow is now up and running, and we're giving you about 12 hours to enter this. Tomorrow morning is the cut-off point, 11 a.m. So with a guaranteed prize fund of 150 grand to be shared amongst the top 100 finishers, including monthly prizes. So Johnny and I, along with Tom Malone and John Duggan, are going to pick our 10 horses to follow for the season and hopefully increase our Irish Injured Jockeys Fund. We'll tweet our horses a little bit later on. Anybody who wants to enter, just visit thetote.ie and look for the Tote 10 to follow on the homepage. Pick your stable of 10 horses and you're all set. There's a live leaderboard in the transfer window in March to make any changes. The league closes tomorrow morning. That's Saturday, November 14th at 11 a.m. So get your 10 horses in ASAP. Who did you pick?
Yeah, I suppose just briefly, the 10 to follow is a great thing. I should mention Sophie O'Hare in HRI. She has this idea of a kind of a fantasy football where you have like you can have your horses, your jockeys and your trainers, and it goes over the season. And I think we need to look at stuff like this that doesn't involve necessarily betting on horses, where you can have a real financial interest without kind of betting, if such is the case. And there are definitely big ideas there in the future in terms of kind of virtual ownership and so forth. But 10 to follow is obviously a long-standing thing. A lot of these are fairly obvious, but it's 10 to follow isn't necessarily about being left field with your selections. I'm trying to pick horses that essentially aren't going to run against each other very often, so that we can have like as many points as possible. Ballyadam, our erstwhile friend Keith Donoghu's a big fan. Shakan Poursois, obviously brilliant chaser trained by Willie Mullins. Elixir Dane, who was very unlucky in the Supreme last season. Envoy Alain, enough said, described as a Rolls Royce by Barry Geraghty talking to John Duggan on Saturday. He's ridden in work recently. Fernie Hollow for the same connections. I think he could go down the similar route and run in the Ballymore this year. I think he's very exciting. Won the Cheltenham Bumper last year. Honeysuckle, brilliant mare, obviously, is going to reappear in the Hatton's Grace. Manila Indo for the same yard, that of Henry de Bromhead, was absolutely fantastic on his comeback run at Wexford. He's probably going to avoid the Gold Cup winner because Alban Photo is not going to likely run against him much this season, if at all, until the Gold Cup. So I'm kind of looking at maybe the Irish angle. He's probably the best of the Irish 3-mile chasers, so you're looking for points that way. That brings on to Paisley Park, who somehow disappointed in the Stayers Hurdle last year, but generally is really solid. Stayers Hurdle lacks depth. I think he's going to pick up points. The Big Getaway is a horse I'm a big fan of. I think he's absolutely stunning to look at. Willie Mullins is going to train him, if not for the juice and for the RSA. I think he'd be very hard to beat wherever he goes. And Wide Receiver for all you gridiron fans, sure. He's a horse that I think is very interesting. He's 50 to 1 for the Albert Barrett. I think he's well worth the bet. Ran a lovely race in the for auction novice hurdle at Navan last week. Behind Easky Lane, who was another of Keith's dud tips last weekend. Sounds like I'm trying to do what you do to me now, just give out about how crap my tips are, which is fair enough. But Keith was very impressive, except for his actual tipping of the horses.
As Easky Lane, he says, for the Albert Bartlett. Was that right?
Yeah. It was very disappointing. It was behind Wide Receiver. Wide Receiver's 50 to 1 to win the Albert Bartlett, even though I think he cost about 400 grand when they bought him. And to me, he's a perfect profile for the race. I can see you already thinking of how am I going to spend the money on my wife and kids on a lovely holiday in April if we can fly again.
Well, there you go. A Plutard, Alboom Photo, Delta Work, Min, Kemboy, how do you pronounce it? Silos Emery?
Silius Emery, yeah.
Silius Emery, Honeysuckle, Sharjah, Abacadabras and Saldier. I looked at the bonus races to see what you get the super bonus points for, and I picked the horses that are going to run in those, because I figure if you're going to get super points, you may as well have horses that are going to be in those races.
Saldier is an interesting one. Somewhat forgotten horse with loads of ability. He's fascinating. Yeah, not a bad 10 horses at all by you, I have to say.
You got to get some strategy in there, you know.
You do, yeah. It's all about strategy.
Right, another Friday night racing is in the books. That is the 10 to follow from the tote. Get onto the tote now, actually, before tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. the league closes, and you can just follow the tote 10 to follow. It's on the homepage of thetote.ie. Pick your stable of 10 horses and you're all set, and we'll obviously keep up to date with our 10 horses and see how much money we can make for the Injured Jockeys Fund. Right, that is Friday night racing. Every Friday afternoon we talk to people involved at the very heartbeat of Irish racing on Friday afternoons at 3 o'clock on all of our social channels, on the OTB Sports app, and of course then on Friday evenings from 8 o'clock on Off the Ball on News Talk. See you next week.
Friday night racing
on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit HRI.